people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. 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 Loud, not big, bitch!
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The sold-out rematch set to go down north of the border tomorrow night.
For the vacant IBF title.
Belgium's own IBO champion will be taking on Mary Spencer, Canada's own Mary Spencer, for the second time for what is the newly vacated IBF title. That's right, both the IBO and the IBF titles will be on the line in this rematch. Femke Hermans, who is approximately 5 years younger than Mary Spencer, and several rounds, several fights, more experienced than Mary Spencer. Can Mary win this match?
Where did she go wrong the first time out?
Well, in her first 7 fights, Mary Spencer was literally plowing through her competition, plowing through the vast majority of these girls through strength of arms and strength of arms alone. But she actually comes from a decorated amateur background.
I think she's gonna summon that up tomorrow.
Because she's more than just a bruiser. She's more than just a strong puncher. She is an educated boxer with the pedigree to do it. Perhaps what it was she underestimated Femke Hermans.
Knows better now.
Her fight took place approximately 10, close to 11 months ago. Femke Hermans, she has fought 2 times since then. Once in March, then again in June.
She's kept busy.
Whereas Mary hasn't seen action since then. She was supposed to return earlier this year, but she suffered some kind of an injury, I vaguely recall.
Yeah.
So she hasn't seen action since December of last year when she first fought Femke Hermans. If nothing else, she's had ample time to work on things and measure her approach.
The landscape is changing at 154.
Mary and Femke are going to be fighting for the newly vacated IBF title. Former champion Henna Rankin will be taking on Slovenia's Emma Kozin for the WBC. Very recently, Terry Harper and Cecilia Brækhus, they fought for the WBA and newly vacated WBO title.
It was this past weekend. They fought to a draw.
Terry keeps her WBA, but the WBO title will remain vacant until such a time as they stage a rematch. Things are shaking, rattling, and rolling at 154 pounds. They will be tomorrow night in Canada. And what is it? What is it exactly that Mary could and should do different in a second fight? Well, she was far too aggressive in the first.
Left herself open to be countered.
It's too obvious what she wanted to do. Too obvious to Femke Hermans, the seasoned veteran, the wily veteran that used Mary's aggression against her. Thus, if aggression is what costed Mary the fight in the first fight, she's got to take a more measured approach in the second. You'll notice that Mary Spencer is quite tall for this weight and quite long. She's got to use that lead hand, use that jab, measure the distance, manage it.
Don't just go crazy winging big punches.
Beat those feet and use the jab. Manage the distance, measure it before you bring over the big punches, the hard punches. I think Mary Spencer's amateur pedigree,
her boxing brain, I think she can win.
She can avenge the loss. She can become IBF champion. She's had 10 months to think about it and work on things. She's been sparring the United Kingdom's own D. Allen, very hard puncher.
She's got to use a jab more.
Keep it working and keep Femke Hermans' attention fixed on the jab so she don't see the right.
She's got to use those feet too, move those feet.
Mary Spencer's tall for the weight. If she stays on the balls of her feet, moves around, she can make herself a hard target for a shorter, stumpier fighter like Femke Hermans.
Instead of you going to Femke, make Femke come to you. She's the shorter fighter.
Make her work for her meal. Force her to come to you. Make mistakes. Lunge in.
Set her up.
Try for big punches.
Set her up.
And set up counters. I don't know exactly what it is that Mary's going to do tomorrow night, but if it was aggression that costed her the first fight, a more defensive and measured approach could win her the second.
Available here stateside on ESPN+.
I'm taking it on faith that Mary has cracked the code. She knows what she's got to do and she knows what she had to change, and that's what we're going to see tomorrow. I'm going to go with Mary Spencer on points to become the junior middleweight division's IBF champion and avenge the loss to Femke Hermans. Mary on points. That's the pick. Men's junior middleweight news. The IBF have finally gotten around to ordering the fight between Charlo and Bakram Murtazaliev. The parties have exactly 30 days until November 9th to agree to a deal, then purse bids.
My thoughts.
I don't know how long Jermel planned on taking. I don't know how long it would have taken him to return to action after having suffered that loss at 168 to Canelo Alvarez.
Beats me.
Given the amount of money that he made, I wouldn't have been at all surprised to see him take as long as a year to return to the ring. That wouldn't have surprised me, though it seems the IBF is all done giving him amnesty.
And believe you me, they have.
Think about when Joe Cordina first won the IBF title and how he suffered a hand injury in that fight. As a result of that injury and not being able to satisfy his mandatory, so soon after he won the belt, they stripped him.
Took it from him.
He eventually fought to get it back, and he got it back. He's got it now, but still, they put a lot of pressure on Joe Cordina. So soon after having become champion, they put pressure on Josh Taylor.
He ended up vacating.
If you've been paying attention the last 3 years, the IBF have been ordering fights, just not at junior middleweight, which didn't make a lot of sense, since Bakram Murtazaliev became IBF mandatory in November of 2019. You heard that right. Before the pandemic, before the shutdown, this guy was in position to fight for the title.
After the Jorge Fortea fight.
You understand what that means? That means this guy was the mandatory challenger to the IBF title before Jermel even won it. He became IBF mandatory in late 2019. Charlo became IBF champion in late 2020, the following year.
And the IBF didn't bug him.
The WBO did. They wanted to make sure that he satisfied their mandatory challenger in Tim Tszyu, and they put him on the spot.
He didn't comply.
Now Tim Tszyu is WBO champion. Will the same happen with Bakram? Bakram Murtazaliev, who sports an unblemished record of 21 wins with no losses, no draws, 15 knockouts. Little known guy, very few people have seen him.
Though he's been around.
He only fought once in 2020, once in 2021, 2 times last year, and he hasn't fought at all this year.
Flying low on the radar.
It's one way to put it. While Charlo was unifying titles with Jason Rosario, 2 Brian Castano fights, what was supposed to be the Tim Tszyu fight that turned into the Canelo Alvarez fight, this whole time, this guy's been mandatory.
So they're not being unfair. They're not being unreasonable. I think they've been very fair. Very reasonable.
They put a lot less pressure on Charlo than they have put on some other fighters, some other champions, like Joe Cordina, like Josh Taylor.
Here we are.
About time.
Yeah.
What were they supposed to do? Give Charlo 6 more months of amnesty? A year? Bakram Murtazaliev is managed by Igas Climax, who we all know has a good working relationship with the people over there at Top Rank. I feel like if the people at the PBC, where Bakram has been fighting, if they cannot accommodate him, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bakram go over there to the Top Rank side of things.
You don't think Jamel's gonna fight him?
Might not. He's got 30 days to reach a deal with this guy. 30 days to make a decision, which means his ring return.
He's on the clock.
They're not giving him much time. When was he planning on coming back versus when he's going to have to, and the availability of resources and fight dates to do the fight.
When?
He just made a lot of fucking money with Canelo Alvarez. I don't know that he's in any hurry to come back. And if he does it, and he doesn't fight Bakram, ranked right behind Bakram Murtazaliev is Jack Colquet.
Think about it. The guy just fought at 168. Now he's got to be in a hurry to make 154?
I wasn't convinced then, and I'm even less convinced now that Jermel is going to return to that weight, because that's a steep drop. This guy's in his mid-30s. He hasn't made that weight in over a year, and his last fight was all the way up there at 168. I'm not convinced he comes back in a jiffy at 154. He might vacate the title.
So maybe we get Bakram Murtazaliev versus Jack Colquet
down the line for what could be the newly vacated IBF title. The landscape is changing at 154.
Show must go on.
Just in keeping with the theme of mandatories, mandates, fights that have been ordered, apparently the WBA has ordered Arsene Goulemarian to take care of the former champion, Uniel Dorticos. The KO doctor, as he's often called, because if nothing else, this guy packs a big punch. You will remember him from the World Boxing Super Series some years ago. Some years later, he hasn't been that active. We haven't seen very much of him, but he's the mandatory challenger for Arsene Goulemarian, sporting a professional record of 26 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 24 knockouts, having been knocked out only once in 28 fights.
It's Arsen's problem now.
There were 2 stories here. There's the fight itself, the fight between Arsene and Uniel, but there's also what this means.
What?
That if Goulemarian is under orders to fight Uniel,
What?
he's not fighting Richard Riakporhe.
What?
Remember, Ben Shalom pulled Richard Riakporhe out of the purse bid for the Jai Opataya fight on the predication that he would get him another title shot with another titleist. That titleist was supposed to be Arsene Goulemarian, who per reports just signed the boxer.
Talked about that.
Sporting a professional record of 27 wins with no losses, no draws, 18 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 27 fights.
Not the most active guy.
What are we looking at? 1 fight in the last 2, going on 3 years? Just 1 fight. And that was in November of last year. He's coming up on a year of inactivity.
Well,
Uniel Dorticos, he's not that much better. He only fought once in 2020, only once in 2021, and only once last year in 2022, in December.
is that 1 fight a year?
1 fight a year in the last 3 years, and still somewhat busier than the champion, than Arsene Goulemarian. If it was their plan to put Richard Riakporhe in the ring with Arsene, this throws a serious monkey wrench in those plans, because now they've either got to pay for this thing, go through with it, or pay Uniel Dorticos to stand down and step aside so that Richard Riakporhe can get the title shot.
No.
Call me crazy, but while Arsene Goulemarian would be a fan-friendly fight for the hardcores, the guys that are familiar with the both of these fighters, that would be a tough sell on Sky Sports. I mean, if the reports are true and they signed Arsene Goulemarian, what you're talking about is an Armenian fighter versus a Cuban fighter.
How's that gonna go over with the Brits?
Ranked number 1 by way of the WBA, things really are shaking, rattling, and rolling at cruiserweight, because it just so happens that this past weekend's fight was a WBA eliminator. Zerto Ramirez versus Joe Smith Jr.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That Zerto Ramirez is getting in position for the winner of Uniel Dorticos versus Arsene Goulemarian, or Arsene versus Richard Riakporhe.
Is that Mike Perez?
At number 3, I didn't even know that guy still boxes.
Wow.
If the reports are true and boxers signed Arsene Goulemarian, I imagine they might want Uniel Dorticos to stand down, get him to step aside so they can move forward with that Richard Riakporhe fight. They're invested in Richard, and they cost him a title shot. The least they can do is make sure he gets one with someone else.
Talk about your clusterfucks.
Ben Shalom, at least to me, seems to be a man in over his head, attempting to fill very big shoes, the big shoes that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom left behind, and it's not looking good.
And how are the fighters?
The ones that left Matchroom for Boxer, Joshua Buatsi, Lawrence Okoli, how are they doing? Have they begun to benefit from migrating yet?
Doesn't look like it.
When it was first announced that Boxer would be fulfilling the role that Matchroom left behind, I thought to myself that these guys, they've got potential. The potential to become Matchroom's biggest competitor in the United Kingdom via the Sky Sports platform and all of their reach, though over time, my perspective has changed. It's changed completely. With the departure, the absence of Adam Smith and Ben Shalom over there, it just seems like they don't have a direction.
These guys are lost at sea.
Finally, downstairs at super middleweight, Jose Benavidez Sr. believes Canelo's power is not there anymore. A very strange thing to say, given that power is the last thing to go. And Canelo,
What's he, 33?
I think it's just Jose being catty. I feel like it's just Jose nitpicking. I was going for Canelo, Jose Benavidez told Mill City Boxing. I wanted him to beat Charlo and look impressive and maybe knock him out in order for him to get all that confidence. And maybe that confidence would make him fight David Benavidez.
You gotta fight that guy.
You know, I'm open to a Crawford fight. I've said that more than once, but if he's not fighting Crawford, I need him to fight David Benavidez. I need him to close Jose's mouth because the guy won't shut the fuck up. How do you nitpick Canelo Alvarez for not knocking out Charlo when your son couldn't knock out the same guy Canelo knocked out?
It doesn't get said enough that David Benavidez is a bigger guy than Canelo, a younger guy than Canelo. He's supposed to be a monster, but he couldn't stop Caleb.
Caleb Plant was exhausted for the last 5 rounds of that fight, hanging on by a thread. And all people can tell you is that he kept holding.
So?
To me, he looked good. He went in there, condition looked good, but I just think that the power is not there anymore. He had a lot of opportunities to finish him, but Charlo was there, and he never really got hurt. Yeah, he dropped him, but it was a flash knockdown. He got up, no no problem, and Canelo couldn't finish him.
What about your son not finishing Caleb Plant? Isn't he a younger fighter?
Isn't he younger than Canelo? Bigger than Canelo?
Yeah.
What is his excuse? And all people will tell you is that Caleb Plant kept holding. But so what if he kept holding? You break the clinch, create some space, and put some punches in there. You're supposed to be a monster, aren't you?
He's fighting Demetrius Andrade in November.
Some people like his chances. Some people don't. Timothy Bradley.
That's what he said.
Now, Benavidez, yes, we call him the monster. But as I watch him on film, I see a lot of opportunities where I think a guy with the smarts of Andrade can make him pay. Andrade is also a left-hander. I mean, that brings a lot more that Benavidez has to deal with in the ring. We haven't seen Benavidez with a whole lot of left-handers. And Benavidez, I think his biggest issue in this fight is going to be his footwork. I feel that he has terrible footwork. He squares up often. And I think a fighter with Andrade's skill set and experience, I think he's going to be able to expose that, come forward, pick his spots wisely, move, be elusive with his defense as well, make this guy miss. And I think we're going to have to see a better version of Benavidez if he's going to pull off this win. He's going to have to be the best that he's ever fought, that we've ever seen him in the boxing ring. Because I'm telling you right now, man, do not count out Andrade, man. He's a sneaky fighter, good, well-schooled boxer, and he has what it takes to outbox Benavidez.
Tim likely sees what I see. That David Benavidez may have the right base style for the job, but he doesn't have all the bells and whistles. Knowing that, and seeing how his father loves to prattle on and pick apart Canelo's performances, he should focus on his son, because he's got a live one in front of him.
Tell him to stop squaring up in front of guys.
Square up in front of a guy, you could get hit with a punch that you don't see and get set on your back pocket because your back foot's not behind you to support you.
Be off balance.
The way they hype this guy up is nauseating. It really is, because this is a very basic fighter.
They say he's got great combinations.
What combinations are you talking about? What combinations? Those Acme shoe shines he gets off on stationary targets with no defense? Those aren't combinations.
That is opportunistic matchmaking.
Timothy Bradley is very observant, because he highlighted what I highlighted a few days ago, that David Benavidez doesn't seem to have very much experience with lefties, with southpaws. The angle of attack could bother him.
Get hit with something he doesn't see, and because he likes to square up so much, he could get set on his back pocket. Set on his back pocket by a non-puncher.
It could happen. It's happened before. It happened years ago in the Ronald Gavril fight. David is hardly the monster that he's made out to be. And before his father starts worrying about how Canelo looks in a fight, how Canelo's doing, you should patch up the holes in your son's game.
Because he's got him.
He really didn't impress me in the Caleb Plant fight, and I had him losing a good portion of those early rounds against Demetrius.
Might make him look even more human.
More than Caleb did, and so many are in denial about it. But I know what I saw, and I know a basic fighter when I see one.